What's up guys? In today's video, I'll be teaching you how to build big shoulders with the anterior delt press, showing you what not to do and then providing very easy form solutions. So first of all, most people are not doing an AD press. They're actually performing the military press, where the bench angle is 100% vertical. Now what's the problem with this? Quite simply put, you're pressing slightly in front of the body and dumping the bar forward, which is giving you really bad leverages, because if you were to press in a vertical straight line, in actuality, you'd be smashing yourself in the chin. This is what my body actually wants to do. So I have no choice but to go right in front, which is awful, and then back in this weird arc. I mean, that'll pump your shoulders. You can argue you're getting more out of less weight, but when you're not lined up correctly, creating all these additional moment arms, what it actually leads to is compensation strategies. The most common being shifting your butt forward. Almost everybody does this. So when you assume this strict military posture and lower in a vertical line, first of all, you're going to hit the top part of the head. So right off the bat, you're lowering slightly in front. But then guess what? You hit the nose. So again, lower in front and boom, you hit the chin. Holy f***. Again in front, and now you finally get under. So what you're doing, clearly, is an arcing motion. It's a rainbow. You're coming in, and then forward, creating this massive moment arm, and then back. Guys talk about the overhead press being inefficient. This is. Because at least when you're standing, you can lean the head back and then shove it through as it starts to clear the forehead, which maintains that vertical bar path. Or you can just stay leaned back. But because with seated overhead pressing, we have back restriction, we can't maneuver the head. So how do guys compensate around this? Simple. They cheat the lift by turning it into a super high incline. So instead of having your back be flush against the pad, naturally, guys will create a gap by leaning back ever so slightly, tilting the head, and now they can kind of clear it a little bit better. It's not perfect. You're pressing around an 85-degree angle, but I would also say that this removes a lot of the benefits of doing the seated overhead press, because with that big gap in between, you have to stabilize your torso, and it can cause back pain when going heavy enough, since you're forced into this unstable bridge. So the vast majority of lifters are doing the military presses like this. And there's levels to this. If you raise the height a bit more, now you can really get into this awkward position. But I don't recommend this form. Instead, why don't you just assume that position from the get-go by simply lowering the 100% torso angle to 75 degrees or so. Easiest fix in the universe. So forget about being 100% vertical. Just lower by one stop down. Now you're in the perfect position to do an anterior delt press. Now this might look diagonal, but the moment you lay back, because of your upper back contact, the body will be in a mostly vertical position. So don't think this is a high incline press. For that, you would need to be the minimum of 60 degrees. So we're one stop above that. You're not in this position, okay? That's 60 degrees. Please don't confuse the two exercises or claim that you're overhead pressing monstrous loads when in fact you're doing a legit incline. The anterior delt press is not. In fact, this is the exact position you would assume if you were to slightly lean back on a standing overhead press. Just that now, we have that back support and we no longer have to maneuver the torso or head. So we're locked in, the core is not a limiter, and check it out. If I lower in a straight vertical line, look at that. It goes in this grazing formation. It's almost like a Smith machine. So we're a couple degrees lower than the vertical positioning where you have the butt shifted forward, which is superior from a movement pattern perspective. That said, it's important not to extend into the bench or have the head touch first, as in doing this. Otherwise, you are changing the movement a little bit and the sternum is slightly elevated. So instead, fall back as normally, lower back first, upper, head, and now you're golden. So no one's gonna tell me that this is not an overhead press. You're just lined up perfectly. Now, the reason this is called an anterior delt press is because you're actually getting a better stretch on the front delts. Because contrary to popular belief, the standing overhead press is not the best exercise for the front delts. It's a great overloader, a competition movement, and the elbows are still in front, similar positioning, but right here, you're not getting that extreme way to stretch. You'd have to get low like that, which the anterior delt press puts you in at that slight angle. So unless you're gonna contort yourself, it's really a mid-range focused movement. So it's like you're too vertical. So with the anterior delt press, you get slightly more range of motion. So I do recommend touching the clavicle, getting as low as possible. And also keep those elbows in with a narrow grip. You see, for this to work effectively, you need to be pressing in this plane of motion. I would only use a wider grip if you were standing or going behind the neck. Same thing when we talk about pulling exercises. Sagittal plane pulls are always like this. You wouldn't do a behind the neck super wide from the front. It just wouldn't be lined up correctly. Same thing here. So to get that deep stretch, this is the correct angle and range of motion. So the key is that the elbows are in front of the body. As long as you stay in this plane of motion, you're good. So for that reason, I'd recommend at most thumb waist distance from the smooths. Elbow stacking. The arms are here. The moment you start to enter a more abducted position or the forearms start to tilt out a bit, then you must accommodate that by assuming a vertical back positioning. So now the arms are out, and notice how I don't have to lean back. So this is the one exception, and it might be a good option if you refuse to use an adjustable bench, or for some reason you can't bring it to a power rack or modify the military pressing station in your gym. Now the reason it doesn't work is because the elbows want to come forward, and that's going to affect the bar path, you see? So you have no choice but to dump them with that wide grip, doing this motion. So that's creating worse leverages, and even though you're leaning back, there's still no way to properly clear in a smooth motion. So that's why you want to be close or medium. And these vertical elbows is important. We want that stacking. It also feels a lot better on the shoulder joints. So you're going to press the most weight. And even if you can see how there's not much coordination involved. The more brute force, the least amount of skill required, the better this is for strength and hypertrophy. Now, one more thing about the elbows, you may find that it's easier to stay tucked by using a false grip. Because when you got that thumb around, it forces the wrist a little bit out, and your elbows naturally want to accommodate in that direction. So my right hand is false, left is classic. If I try to rotate the elbows in, because this thumb is here, there's a lot of wrist pressure. So there's kind of a natural tendency to flare out ever so slightly to reduce that discomfort, or wrap up really tight. Whereas when you have the thumbs over like this, honestly, you can tuck inwards to the extreme and the alignment is not compromised. Now, obviously, you're not gonna press like this. Please don't do that, I beg you. But you can stay a lot more stacked and naturally tucked. And actually, because you can maneuver the elbows, as you clear the top, you can flare a bit more. So you'll find that you get better triceps activation and superior lockout strength. So I got that natural tuck, I'm pressing up, and I flare just a little bit. And it's very natural to do this. So in, up, up, up. Notice how I'm pressing back, I flare. Also, because you're pressing in a straight line and back, It's important that the bench is in front of the rack. This way, you do not hit the uprights. That is the best way of ruining your groove. I can't tell you how many PRs were robbed from me because I decided to be too far back, especially when you're rushing. So you're all hyped up, you're ready. Don't let that happen to you. So as you can see, the top of the barbell is level with the top of the bench, and that is too far in front. So now we have a problem where you're gonna do this pull-over motion. First, you're pressing away, and then using your lats to drag it in front. So there's all this horizontal distance to overcome. Now, the only benefit is you can do whatever you want with the pressing pattern, even going like exaggerated, you know? You can have the worst form in the world, and you probably won't hit the rack. But the unrack is compromised to such an extent that you just won't be able to go heavy unless you have a spotter. So just like guys get confused with Smith machine pressing, so does this apply to the barbell, but it's worse because we're not pressing in a straight vertical line. We first got to get it out of the rack. And so my little trick for you is to align the shadow of the barbell, same dimensions, with the tip of the bench. So it's slightly in front, which is going to give you a just position when you hit the lockout, almost skinning the uprights. But the leverages are the best. So my hands are still slightly back, but notice how I could easily drag it out. And you see me do this with 245 pounds for 2 reps. So I'm lowering in a straight line, it skins the chin, full range, press up, and then slightly back. And you'll see how that perfectly cleared the uprights. So you can lift heavy and not miss groove. That said, it's important that you maintain a controlled tempo because bouncing can ruin everything. And it's actually the biggest form mistake next to not having the proper setup. So I highly recommend that you at least pause on the clavicle. This will strip off a good 15 pounds, or you may lose 3 to 5 reps, but you're training the lengthened position. And this is going to reduce momentum. So you will have a lot smoother grinds. In fact, many of you think that you have lagging triceps or lockout issues when in fact is that you're rushing so much that when you bounce off that chest, you're creating additional moment arms. The bar is coming in front of you rather than up and back. So please don't do this. If you have a lot of overhead press experience, you can go faster. But what I find is that people will start to press in front of the body like this, even though they have the correct body angle. Or the momentum will carry them through, then they'll get stuck right about here, which is only exaggerated with that closer grip. And that's what you're using for the anterior delt press. So oftentimes you can get away with it when you're doing something like a wide grip push press, or if you're doing fast partial repetitions. But if you're coming out from the deepest position, then you got some horizontal deviation of the barbell, then that's creating more risk for sudden failure. Like you might think you had 1 or 2 reps left, you go for that bouncy rep, and next thing you know, you're just stuck. And you're like, what the hell happened? And everyone's looking at you confused. It's because you were bouncing from rep number 1. So if you're gonna do this shit, you better be strong. And my standard is gonna be at least 185, or being able to rep your body weight. So only once you've mastered going slowly can you rush. But I'll be honest, it's still completely unnecessary. And even for a guy like me, sometimes I will be out of my groove. And when you do this, please set up the safety pins. If you can't, then you have no choice but to go slow, or at least have a spotter. Because, like I said, it's hit or miss. Now, I got lucky there, but what will actually happen is this. I'm too strong, but I'm gonna fail this one. Failure. And by doing it like that, my form was kind of all over the place. There was some horizontal deviation. What I told you not to do, even I made that mistake. So even for someone like me, my form still broke. You saw the bar dumping forward as I was pressing up. That's what bouncing does. Keep in mind, this is still free weights. I suppose the Smith machine AD press would be the exception, but you're moving the bar freely in space. I don't have to explain this, but there is some degree of instability. Even though we got the back support, the legs are locked in, you're stacked in front. Just by going too quickly, it can throw out everything that I just talked about. It's not just the fact that you're too weak to lift the weight, it's that you're distorting your mechanics within the set. Then you're actually strengthening that bad movement pattern over time. You want to control your tempo just a little bit and ideally pause. Or if you can do touch and go, just don't bounce. So now we're gonna wrap up all these tips together with a controlled tempo for perfect technique. Yes, you can still go heavy. You've seen me do 200 pounds with a super slow tempo. We're talking about 5-second eccentrics and long pauses. So for those saying, oh, I can't even lift 135 with this form, it's because your cheating was so bad, you're just deluding yourself. So drop your ego, use correct technique. Anyone can build up to repping their body weight if they take the time to reinforce good habits from the start. So we got the false grip, unrack in front of the body, elbows in, lower in a straight line. See, it clears the chin. Hold it for a brief second, staying tight with the lats. Press up in a vertical line, and then slightly back so I don't hit the uprights. And then in real time, so as long as you pause the bottom, you can explode the top, and it's gonna be smooth every single time. So now, I'm done. My delts are ruined. By the way, even though it's an anterior delt press, you're still hitting the side delts. They do have good leverage, and EMG corroborates this. Plus, just the fact that this has good carryover to the overhead press and behind neck press is a good enough reason because it's a brute force developer that feeds into your other work. And just by getting stronger at that, you're enabling better progressive overload across the board, which in turn will give you better side delt gains in the long term. Yeah, you want to isolate for optimal results. I'm going on a tangent here. Guys, this is how you do the anterior delt press to get massive shoulders. The fact that you can maximally force without any restrictions, like the core, the upper back, the movement pattern itself is just low skill, no barrier to entry. Anybody could do it, low equipment. The fact that we have all these benefits makes it a worthy long-term main press or accessory. So it's going to help bodybuilders and strength athletes alike, especially for calisthenics, like handstand work, and strongmen. So you see the pump, you see the results. I'm someone who built the majority of my delt gains by doing heavy overhead presses. Although I'm not a minimalist, this alone is gonna get you right. So get big to get strong because that's actually how it works, not the other way around. You don't have to be a freak of nature, but you should have some base strength. And this will tick every single box. So just copy my form and enjoy many years of deltoid happiness.